And that was Paula Cabral reporting, and I want to bring in now Ian Vasquez for more on Xi's visit as well as China's growing relationship with Ecuador. He specializes in foreign policy at the Cato Institute. He alluded to this newspaper article. I just want to read a little bit of it. President Xi said, as Ecuador's sincere friend, China will take an active part in post-disaster reconstruction and help people in quake-hit areas rebuild their homes and get their life back to normal at an early date. How far does something like that go in terms of cementing a relationship between China and Ecuador, that kind of a message?
Well, it's always popular in the country that's receiving that kind of aid. That's not necessarily where most of the money is going to in Ecuador. Ecuador has a big debt now to China that is being used for all sorts of things, generally a huge increase in government spending. But that's what typically political leaders do. They focus on the things that are going to be the least controversial.
Let's talk a little bit about this strategic partnership. They entered into this in January of 2015. What are we seeing in terms of the relationship? How is it coming together between China and Ecuador, would you say?
Well, this relationship is much more important to Ecuador than it is to China. As I say, the debt that Ecuador has with China is over $8 billion. That's a drop in the bucket for China, but it's a huge amount for Ecuador. China has been, as in the case of Ecuador, one of the main financiers or the main financer of the left of center governments in the region, the populist governments that have been basically shut out of international markets, like Venezuela, like Argentina in recent years, Brazil to some extent. And Ecuador fits into that pattern. So the relationship has been that China fills a gap that other countries have left and creditors in the private markets have left.
So talk to me about Latin America as in total with China. You mentioned the relationship with three of the countries, Venezuela, Brazil, Ecuador. How does the relationship with Latin America change vis-a-vis a new incoming president who has perhaps more of an isolationist tone in his rhetoric, and also one who says, you know, he's going to rip up NAFTA, not crazy about the TPP when it comes to these type of agreements with other countries. How does that affect the relationship, do you think?
I think it strengthens the relationship with China because essentially the most important aspect of bilateral relations with the United States or with China is a trade relationship. That's based on wealth creation and a beneficial type of exchange. Not so much on state-directed credits, which China has participated in a lot with clients that frankly have not been so great, like Venezuela. And Ecuador increasingly is becoming a bad client. In fact, that's one of the reasons why this visit is so important to the Ecuadorian government. They've increased their debt, they're running out of money. The fact that things aren't looking so good in Latin America for the populist governments means that China wants to make a show of how it's still relevant, and maybe even more relevant than before in the region. It can take the place of the TPP, which it was excluded from, and start building the very same type of network and trade relationships that the TPP had, but with China involved and without the United States.
Let me ask one final question before we let you escape here. APEC just around the corner. What do you suspect is going to happen with that?
I think they're all going to try to figure out what's going on with the TPP. And it's not very clear. It's not clear to me that Donald Trump knows what he's going to do. He said he doesn't like it and that he's going to reject it, but he's all unpredictable. And he's quite liable, it wouldn't surprise me, to declare he's made some fixes and now it's the greatest free trade agreement ever.
So one thing that he is he's predictably unpredictable, I guess.
That's right.
Ian, thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Thank you.